I had everything going for me. At 29, I was crushing it, as a software engineer at one of the top tech firms in Boston. My traditional religious parents had always been proud of me, their only son who followed all the rules and checked all the boxes. My childhood best friend Jason had been by my side through thick and thin. Then there was his younger sister Amanda. One lie from her lips was all it took to shatter my entire world. She claimed I got her pregnant. My parents disowned me. Now, the truth is finally out, and they are scrambling to make amends. Before I tell you how my life imploded from one woman's lie, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had someone's words turn your world upside down. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, my life was a blueprint for the American dream. My father, Michael, built his reputation as one of the most respected cardiologists in the state. Every weekend you could find my mother, Sarah, teaching Sunday school at the brick church where 3 generations of our family had worshipped. Their expectations for me were crystal clear. From day one, excel in school, attend a prestigious university, secure a stable career, and eventually marry a nice girl who shared our values. Derek, my father would say during our Sunday dinners, a man is only as good as his word and his work. Remember that. His authoritative voice still echoes in my memories, along with the smell of my mother's pot roast and the clink of the good china reserved for these family occasions. Jason entered my life in 3rd grade, when he defended me against some playground bullies. We bonded over video games and basketball, forming a friendship that carried us through awkward teenage years and into adulthood. Unlike my stable home, Jason navigated the choppy waters of divorced parents. His father disappeared to Florida with a new girlfriend, leaving his mother to raise both Jason and his younger sister Amanda alone. Amanda was 6 years younger than us, a gap that made her merely background noise during our high school years. I remember her as a skinny kid with braces who would occasionally interrupt our video game sessions, desperate for attention. Sometimes she would accidentally spill drinks on our controllers, or claim her mother needed Jason immediately, only for us to discover it was a fabrication. Sorry about my sister, Jason would say after these incidents. Ever since the divorce, she has been pulling these stunts. Mom thinks she has some abandonment issues or something. By the time I graduated from Northeastern University with my computer science degree, I had secured a position at Technova Solutions, where my career trajectory pointed steadily upward. Last month I received a promotion to lead developer with a corner office overlooking the Charles River, a fact that made my father actually shed a tear of pride when I announced it over dinner. Work was not the only area where things were looking up. Natalie, a talented UX designer who joined our team last year, had been catching my eye. We had progressed from coffee breaks to lunch dates, and I found myself thinking about her intelligent brown eyes and quick laugh long after our conversations ended. She seemed genuinely interested in me. Not my salary or status, but my ideas and dreams. For the first time, I could envision the future my parents wanted for me without feeling trapped by their expectations. Everything seemed to align perfectly until Amanda reappeared in our lives. Now 23, she had dropped out of community college and moved back in with her mother. Jason mentioned she had been through some rough patches, which I later learned was a euphemism for a failed relationship with her much older professor and a growing reputation for drama. The warning signs were there, though I failed to recognize their significance at the time. When Jason brought her to our weekly basketball games, I noticed her eyes following me with unsettling intensity. She would position herself to sit next to me at group gatherings, her hand occasionally brushing against mine in ways that seemed deliberate rather than accidental. I maintained a polite distance, attributing her behavior to simple friendliness or perhaps a harmless crush. "Watch out for Amanda," Jason warned me one evening as we shot hoops in his driveway. "She has been asking a lot of questions about you lately, like what I asked sinking a three-pointer. Your job, your parents, whether you are seeing anyone serious." He hesitated. "Look, I love my sister, but she has a history of creating stories to get attention. Mom caught her telling people at church that she had been accepted to Harvard when she had not even applied." I laughed it off. "I am not worried. Besides, I am interested in Natalie. Amanda must know that." The real trouble began at a dinner my parents hosted. I had mentioned that Jason's mother was going through a difficult time after losing her job, and my mother, always eager to extend Christian charity, insisted I invite them all over. "Your friends are always welcome in our home," she said, though I knew this hospitality came with the unspoken expectation that my associates would reflect well on the family. Throughout the evening, I noticed Amanda observing my parents with unusual attention, the way they interacted, how my father said grace, the proud glances they cast my way. When I mentioned my recent promotion, she seemed fascinated by our family dynamic in a way that made me vaguely uneasy. "Your parents are so great," she whispered, as I helped her with her coat at the end of the night. "You are so lucky. They really love you." There was something in her voice, a mixture of admiration and resentment, that sent a shiver down my spine. 2 weeks later, my world collapsed. It was a sunny Sunday in April when Amanda showed up at my parents' doorstep, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I was not there. I only heard about it afterward in fragmented, accusatory phone calls and text messages. According to my mother, Amanda appeared absolutely distraught as she told them she was pregnant. The father she claimed between sobs was me. She said, "You took advantage of her vulnerability when she visited Jason's apartment last month while he was out picking up food," my mother reported, her voice trembling with emotion. "She said you had been flirting with her for weeks, and that you promised to leave that woman from your office for her." The accusation was so absurd, so completely fabricated, that my first reaction was disbelieving laughter. "Mom, that is ridiculous. Nothing happened between Amanda and me. Nothing. She showed us the pregnancy test, Derek." My mother's voice hardened. "And she knew things about your bedroom at our house that she would only know if she had been there." What I did not realize then was that Amanda had used the bathroom during that dinner at my parents' house, the one connected to my childhood bedroom that my mother had preserved, like a shrine to my achievements. She had gathered enough details to make her story convincing. Jason called me next, his voice a mixture of anger and confusion. "Dude, what the hell? My sister is saying you and her, that she is pregnant. Please tell me this is not true. Jason, you know me. You know this is complete bullshit," I said, my mind racing to understand how this was happening. "I have never touched Amanda, never even been alone with her. You have to believe me." His silence spoke volumes. "I want to believe you, man. But she is really convincing. She has dates details. She even showed Mom and your parents the positive pregnancy test." What I would later discover was that Amanda had purchased a positive pregnancy test online. Yes, that is apparently a thing people sell to support her elaborate lie. The situation escalated with frightening speed. Amanda's mother called my parents to express her disappointment in me. The news spread through my parents' church community like wildfire, with sympathetic glances toward my mother and condemning looks toward my father for raising a son capable of such behavior. At work, hushed conversations stopped when I entered the break room. Someone had connected the dots between Jason's sister and me, and rumors began circulating. Natalie, who had initially offered support, began pulling away as Amanda's campaign continued. She sent texts to mutual friends, claiming I had been secretly messaging her for months, even fabricating screenshots of conversations that never occurred. The breaking point came 3 weeks after Amanda's initial accusation. My parents summoned me to their house for what they called a necessary conversation about responsibility. I arrived hoping to finally make them see reason, carrying printed alibis for the date Amanda claimed our encounter happened, receipts from a work lunch with clients, and security footage timestamps from my office building. My father did not even glance at them. "Derek, we did not raise you to run from your mistakes," he said, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone he used with difficult patience. "We raised you to face consequences and do the right thing." "Dad, there are no consequences to face because nothing happened," I insisted, pushing the evidence toward him. "Look at these. I was at work all day and then at a client dinner the night she claims we were together." My mother, seated rigidly beside him, wiped a tear. "Why would she make something like this up, Derek? What would she possibly have to gain attention drama?" "I do not know. But Jason himself told me she has a history of lying for exactly those reasons." My father stood, his face flushed with anger. I had rarely seen directed at me. "Enough. I will not listen to you slander a young woman in trouble. You have 2 options. Admit what you have done, and take responsibility for this child, or the ultimatum hung in the air between us. I stood my ground. I will not admit to something I did not do. Not even for you. Then you leave us no choice, my father said, his voice breaking slightly. Until you are ready to tell the truth and make this right, you are no longer welcome in this house. Your mother and I cannot support someone who would behave this way and then lie to our faces. My mother's words cut the deepest. I did not raise a son like this. I do not even know who you are anymore. I left with my father's parting shot ringing in my ears. Return your house key. We will be changing the locks tomorrow. Within days, all financial connections to my parents were severed. My father had co-signed the lease on my apartment as a favor when I first graduated, a gesture that now became a weapon, as he informed my landlord he would no longer guarantee the rent. The joint bank account we had maintained since my college years, where my father occasionally deposited little extras for holidays and birthdays, was closed. Even the cell phone plan we had shared as a family for a decade cut me off mid-call while I was trying to explain my side to a distant cousin. Just like that, I was cast out from the family that had defined my identity for 29 years. The next few months were the darkest of my life. With my lease terminated and savings dwindling from legal consultations, I found myself living in the spare bedroom of my cousin Tyler's cramped apartment. Tyler was the black sheep of the extended family, a struggling musician who had never earned my father's approval, and perhaps the only relative willing to defy the unofficial excommunication order. Their lost man, he would say, strumming his guitar in the living room while I stared at the ceiling, wondering how my life had imploded so completely. Family should believe you first, ask questions later. But the isolation extended far beyond my parents. Jason gradually stopped returning my calls, explaining awkwardly in our last conversation that it is just too complicated right now with his mother and sister. Mutual friends drifted away, uncomfortable with being caught in what they perceived as a messy he said, she said situation. The professional consequences proved equally devastating. Though I had done nothing wrong, the whispers and sideways glances followed me through the office. 2 months after Amanda's accusation, my supervisor called me into a glass-walled conference room. "Derek, your work has been suffering." He began shuffling papers without meeting my eyes. "And there have been some concerns about personal issues affecting the workplace environment." "You mean the lies someone is spreading about me?" I challenged past the point of diplomatic restraint. He sighed. "Look, we are not making judgments about your private life. But when clients start asking to work with different team leads because they have heard things, it becomes a business issue." I was removed from client-facing projects and relegated to back-end work that could be done without interaction. My recent promotion began to feel like a cruel joke, as younger developers were assigned to the innovative projects I had been promised. Each morning I forced myself out of bed with diminishing conviction. Anxiety and depression clouded my thoughts, making even simple coding tasks require monumental effort. Some days I found myself researching tech companies in other states, contemplating the prospect of starting over somewhere my reputation had not been poisoned. Natalie, who had initially offered tentative support, finally ended things completely after Amanda sent her direct messages with more fabricated details. "I believe you, Derek," she said, not sounding particularly convinced. "But this is all too much drama for me right now. Maybe when things settle down." We both knew when things settle down was just a gentle way to make a permanent exit. The turning point arrived from an unexpected source. I was nursing a cold brew at my new regular coffee shop, chosen specifically because it was nowhere near my old haunts, when a familiar voice called my name. Jason's mother, Ellen, stood there with uncharacteristic hesitation. "May I join you?" she asked, already pulling out the chair across from me. I braced myself for more accusations, but instead found an ally. Ellen had begun to notice discrepancies in Amanda's story dates that changed details that evolved with each telling, and most significantly a lack of any physical signs of pregnancy, despite being supposedly 3 months along. This is not the first time she confided, her fingers nervously shredding a napkin. When Amanda was 17, she accused her math teacher of inappropriate behavior. There was an investigation nearly cost the poor man his career, before she finally admitted she made it up because she was failing his class. She reached into her purse and slid a business card across the table. "This is Amanda's former therapist. She cannot legally discuss Amanda's case with you, but if your lawyer requests records through proper channels, she left the implication hanging. Why are you helping me? I asked, suspicious after months of universal condemnation. Ellen's eyes welled with tears. Because I love my daughter enough to recognize when she needs real help, not enablers. And because I remember the little boy who was always kind to my son when others were not. That conversation ignited a spark of hope I had nearly extinguished. The next day I contacted a lawyer specializing in defamation cases, Jeffrey Watson, a former prosecutor with piercing eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. False accusations of paternity that damage your reputation and livelihood. We can work with that, he said, after hearing my story. But we need evidence, not just your word against hers. What followed was a methodical campaign to reclaim my life. We documented every interaction, gathered alibis, and built a timeline that exposed the impossibility of Amanda's claims. Security footage from my office building confirmed my whereabouts during the alleged encounter. Credit card records showed I had been at a business dinner with colleagues 5 miles away. Most damning of all, Jason finally broke ranks with his sister. After months of awkward distance, he called me late one night. I found something he said, his voice hushed. I was using Amanda's phone to order pizza when messages from her friend Zoe popped up. They were talking about the Derek situation. Dude, she admitted everything, how she planned it, bought the test online, even practiced her crying in the mirror before going to your parents? Why would she do this to me? I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Jason's response chilled me. The messages said she wanted to see what it would take to break the perfect family she envied. Your parents' approval, your success, she resented all of it. With this new evidence in hand, my lawyer drafted a cease and desist letter outlining the potential for a devastating defamation lawsuit. We requested a meeting with my parents, who reluctantly agreed after Jeffrey made it clear that they too could face legal consequences for their role in spreading false accusations. That meeting in Jeffrey's wood-paneled office marked the first time I had seen my parents in nearly 5 months. My father looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. My mother could not meet my gaze as Jeffrey methodically presented our evidence. We have documented proof that Derek was nowhere near the location on the date in question, he explained, laying out time-stamped security footage. Furthermore, we have reason to believe Miss Amanda Williams purchased a falsified pregnancy test to support her fabricated claim. My father, never one to admit error, easily fell back on medical skepticism. Pregnancy tests can give false positives. Perhaps she genuinely believed Jeffrey cut him off. We are also filing a motion for medical verification of the alleged pregnancy, which our evidence suggests never existed. That was the tipping point. Within days, confronted with the mountain of evidence and the threat of legal action, Amanda's story crumbled. Jason facilitated a meeting where, faced with her own contradictory statements and the text messages to her friend Amanda, finally admitted the truth. I never thought it would go this far, she sobbed, unable to look at me. I just wanted to see what would happen. I was jealous of your perfect family, your parents who are so proud of you. My dad left and never looked back. Nobody has ever been proud of me. As part of our legal settlement, Amanda was required to write a formal retraction and apology letter, copies of which went to my parents, their church community, and my workplace. Jason's mother insisted that Amanda resume therapy as a condition for continuing to live at home. The vindication brought relief, but not immediate healing. The damage to relationships and trust had cut too deep for simple solutions. Rebuilding my life after vindication proved more complex than I had anticipated. While the legal battle had cleared my name, the emotional landscape remained scarred. I decided to maintain distance from my parents, ignoring their initial awkward attempts at reconciliation via text messages and voicemails. We just want to talk, my mother pleaded in one message. We need to make this right. I let her words hang unanswered in digital space, not out of vindictiveness, but self-preservation. I needed time to process the betrayal of being disowned by the very people who had raised me to value truth and integrity. My professional life demanded immediate attention. Though my company offered a lukewarm apology after receiving Amanda's formal retraction, the damage to my reputation lingered in subtle ways. I decided a fresh start was necessary and leveraged my vindication into a position at a competing firm with a 20% salary increase and lead developer status on their flagship project. The unexpected silver lining emerged in the form of new friendships formed in the crucible of adversity. Tyler, my cousin who had offered shelter during my darkest days, introduced me to his circle of friends, artists, musicians, and tech entrepreneurs who accepted me without judgment. Through them, I discovered a freedom from the rigid expectations that had defined my earlier life. I leased a modern apartment in a downtown high-rise, a deliberate departure from the suburban colonial aesthetic of my upbringing. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city skyline, a daily reminder that my world had expanded beyond the narrow confines of my parents' approval. 3 months after the legal settlement, I finally agreed to meet my parents for dinner at a neutral restaurant, neither their territory nor mine. The conversation began with painful formality, as though we were distant acquaintances rather than family. "You look well." My mother offered her eyes, cataloging changes in my appearance. The slightly longer hair, the absence of the Brooks Brothers attire. My father had always insisted was proper for a professional. "I am well," I replied simply. My father struggled visibly with humility, a foreign concept to a man accustomed to authority. "Derek, we want to apologize for our lack of faith in you." The words seemed physically painful for him to produce. "We should have trusted you." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, not softening the blow to spare his pride. My mother reached across the table, her fingers stopping short of actually touching my hand. "Can you ever forgive us? We have been praying for reconciliation." The question hung between us, complicated and raw. "Forgiveness is a process," I finally said, echoing the therapist I had been seeing weekly. "I am working on it. But trust has to be rebuilt. It does not just reappear because you want it to." That dinner established the template for our gradual reconciliation, cautious, measured steps back towards something resembling family. My mother made greater efforts, sending thoughtful texts that respected my boundaries rather than seeking immediate absolution. She never asked to visit my new apartment, but sent a houseplant as a housewarming gift with a note that read simply, "When you are ready, I would love to see your new home." My father found emotional vulnerability more challenging. His attempts at connection often came disguised as professional advice or news articles he thought might interest me. During our third dinner together, after several drinks loosened his usual reserve, he finally addressed the heart of the matter. "I failed you as a father," he admitted, staring into his whiskey, rather than meeting my eyes. I was so concerned with how things appeared to others that I forgot my first duty was to believe in my son. "Why did you find it so easy to believe her?" I asked the question that had haunted me for months. "You had known me my entire life. You had met her once." He considered this for a long moment. "I think I was afraid of having raised someone who would shirk responsibility. The idea that my son would deny his actions seemed worse than the actions themselves." He shook his head slowly. "I was wrong, and my pride cost us both dearly." Meanwhile, Amanda faced her own reckoning. As part of our settlement, she entered intensive therapy rather than facing a destructive lawsuit. Jason maintained contact with both of us, navigating the uncomfortable position of mediator between friend and sister. "She is doing the work," he told me during one of our gradually resuming basketball games. The therapist diagnosed her with some serious issues related to abandonment and attention-seeking. "Not that it excuses what she did to you, but understanding helps." I finished for him. While forgiveness for Amanda remained a distant prospect, the knowledge that she was getting help diminished some of the anger that had consumed me. The community that had been so quick to condemn me showed less unanimity in welcoming me back. Some church members approached with genuine remorse for their rush to judgment, while others maintained a distance that suggested lingering doubt. I found I cared less about their opinions than I once had. Through therapy sessions, I began processing not just the recent trauma, but older patterns as well. I recognized how my entire life had been built around earning approval from parents, teachers, employers, rather than determining my own values and boundaries. The crisis forced you to develop an internal compass, my therapist observed. When external validation was removed, you had to decide who you are without it. 6 months after the vindication, Natalie reached out with a coffee invitation. Our conversation was tentative at first, weighted with the memory of her withdrawal during my ordeal. "I should have believed you," she said, directly addressing the elephant in the room. "I let other people's opinions influence me instead of trusting my own judgment about your character." While her apology was sincere, we both recognized that some bridges once broken cannot be perfectly restored. We parted as friends, rather than rekindling the romance that had been lost to circumstance. Instead, I found myself drawn to Maya, a graphic designer I met through my new professional circle. Her straightforward nature and independence appealed to me, but most attractive was her response, when I eventually shared the story of Amanda's accusation. "What a terrible thing to live through," she said, without a hint of doubt or judgment. "It says a lot about your strength that you fought for the truth rather than taking an easier path." A year after the false accusation that had derailed my life, I invited my parents to dinner at my apartment. The evening marked a new phase in our healing process. Not a return to what was, but the careful construction of something new. "I want you to be part of my life," I told them, as we stood overlooking the city lights from my balcony. "But I need you to understand that our relationship has changed. I am not the son who seeks your approval for every decision. I need you to respect that." My mother nodded, tears glistening. My father, in a gesture that spoke volumes, simply extended his hand to shake mine, an acknowledgement of my adulthood, an autonomy that he had never fully granted before. The experience taught me that truth, while sometimes painfully slow, does eventually surface. It showed me that family bonds, though resilient, require mutual respect to truly flourish. Most importantly, it revealed my own capacity to stand firm in personal integrity, even when standing completely alone. I do not know if the relationship with my parents will ever recapture the uncomplicated trust of my childhood. Perhaps it should not. Perhaps the more nuanced, honest connection we are building now is healthier than what came before. What I do know is that sometimes you must lose everything to discover what truly matters, and that the hardest moments reveal both unexpected weakness and surprising strength in those around you. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with family after a devastating betrayal? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming life's unexpected challenges. Share this video with someone who might be going through their own struggle with family trust issues. Sometimes, knowing others have walked similar paths can provide comfort during difficult times. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your truth is worth fighting for, even when you stand alone.